Robin Hood. Produced by Temno TV, Temno LLC. Chapter 1, The Ballad of Little Robin.
Yo, Robin! You gonna daydream all day? Or you gonna play some 2-on-2 before Mrs. Rodriguez chases us off the court again?
9-year-old Robin Hood blinked, snapping back to the cracked asphalt court behind Building C. The sun, a big, hazy orange ball fighting through the city smog, cast long, distorted shadows of the chain-link fence. The air hung thick and smelled like exhaust fumes, and the faint, sugary promise of the Polita cart down the street.
Nah, Kai,
Robin said, adjusting the brim of his slightly too big baseball cap.
just thinking.
Kai, a kid built like a sturdy fire plug with knees perpetually scraped, dribbled the worn basketball between his legs, the sound a dull thud against the ground.
Thinking? About what? Whether that pigeon over there is secretly a government spy.
Robin snorted, a small puff of disbelief.
Nah, man, bigger than pigeons, thinking about gold.
Gold?
Another kid, Tiny Tim, who was, ironically, the tallest of the group, ambled over, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. His oversized sneakers squeaked softly on the asphalt.
Like pirate treasure gold?
Exactly. But like everywhere,
Robin explained, his eyes wide with the vision.
gold coins, gold chains, gold cars, you know, rich gold.
Kai stopped dribbling. The ball rolled a few inches and bumped against Tiny Tim's foot.
Rich? Like Mr. Sterling, who owns the bodega? He's got that fancy watch.
Nah, richer than Mr. Sterling.
Robin declared, walking over to lean against the warm, gritty fence.
Richer than that guy on TV with the solid gold toilet.
Tiny Tim tilted his head, his brow furrowed.
A solid gold toilet? Why would anyone need that?
Because they're rich, Tim. That's why.
Robin threw his hands up slightly in exasperation.
They can have whatever they want. And that's what I want, man. To be rich, like stupid rich.
Kai retrieved the ball and started bouncing it idly again.
Stupid rich, huh? What would you even do with all that money, Robin? Buy all the bubble gum in the world.
Robin shook his head, a serious look on his face. The usual playful glint in his eyes was replaced with something determined.
Nah. First, I'm buying my mom that apartment she always talks about. The one with the balcony that actually has plants, not just empty flower pots.
He paused, looking out past the basketball court, past the graffiti-covered walls of the Loxley projects, the Loxley PJs, as everyone called them, towards the taller buildings downtown that scraped the smoggy sky.
Then I'm coming back here.
Tiny Tim and Kai exchanged confused glances.
Coming back here?
Tiny Tim asked, his voice a little hesitant.
Why would you come back here if you're stupid rich? Wouldn't you be, like, on an island made of gold?
Robin grinned, that playful spark returning.
Maybe a little island time. But nah, I gotta come back. See all this?
He gestured around, taking in the worn buildings, the chipped paint, the overflowing dumpster near the corner.
It ain't right, man. We got good people here. Smart people, funny people. But we ain't got opportunity. You know? The good schools downtown, the parks that ain't got broken swings, the jobs that pay enough to get your own place.
Robin kicked lightly at a loose pebble on the ground.
None of that is really here.
He looked back at his friends, his expression earnest.
So, I get rich. Really rich, happy rich, set for life rich. And then I come back and fix stuff. Build new schools. Build community centers. Build businesses so folks here got good jobs right down the street.
Kai stopped dribbling again, the ball held loosely in his hands.
Like you'd be some kind of superhero of rich people.
Robin laughed, a bright, clear sound that cut through the urban noise.
Maybe a superhero with a solid gold toilet.
Tiny Tim chuckled.
Okay, but seriously, you do all that, build stuff, give people jobs?
Every single bit of it.
Robin affirmed, nodding his head.
Make sure everyone in the PJs is doing good, happy, got what they need.
He kicked the pebble harder this time, watching it skitter across the asphalt. The big dreams felt good, warm, like the fading sunlight on his face. But then the feeling shifted. He looked down at his worn sneakers, the laces tied with careful double knots that Mom insisted on. He looked at his scraped knees under his shorts. He looked at his small hands, not yet big enough to even palm the basketball properly. The grand plans, the gold, the schools, the jobs. They felt suddenly very far away, miles away, a whole lifetime away. He was 9, just 9. He wasn't a rich superhero. He wasn't building anything but maybe a lopsided fort out of cardboard boxes and old blankets. He wasn't giving anyone jobs, unless you counted helping Mrs. Rodriguez carry her groceries up the stairs for $1 and a stale cookie. The vastness of his dreams crashed a little against the smallness of his reality. Kai bounced the ball.
So, speaking of jobs and giving back, you gonna help me and Timmy beat the Henderson twins? Or you just gonna stand there and get lost in space?
Robin took a deep breath, pushing the overwhelming feeling down. The dreams were still there, simmering beneath the surface, big and bright. But right now, there was a basketball game to be played. A small, important challenge right here in the Loxley PJs. He pushed off the fence, a determined grin spreading across his face.
All right, I'm coming.
Robin declared, jogging back toward the center of the court.
But just so you know, when I'm rich, we're installing air conditioning out here.
Kai and Tiny Tim laughed, the sound echoing slightly against the surrounding buildings. Yeah, he was just a kid, but a kid could dream, couldn't he? And maybe, just maybe, a kid's dream, no matter how wild, was the first, smallest step towards making something big happen. Even a solid gold toilet. The game began. Chapter 2, Arrows of Affection and a Gentle Giant. Robin was on a mission, a top-secret, high-stakes operation involving a slightly deflated soccer ball and a daring attempt to kick it over the unforgiving, spike-topped fence that marked the edge of the Loxley Projects Park area, also known as the Gauntlet of Lost Sports Equipment. Kai was his lookout, peering around the corner of a graffiti-covered utility box that someone had optimistically tagged with "Art is Life."
All right, Kai. You see anyone? Mrs. Gable with her hawk eyes? Old man Fitzwilliam and his garden hose of doom?
Robin whispered, positioning the ball carefully on a small mound of dirt. Kai peeked back.
All clear, Captain. The only moving target is that squirrel trying to burgle Mrs. Gable's bird feeder again.
Good. Robin took a deep breath. This wasn't just about retrieving a soccer ball. This was about conquering the fence, proving he could overcome obstacles. It was, in a very small way, practice for his future rich, do-gooder self. Every victory, no matter how minor, built character. Or at least, that's what he told himself to justify the potential risk of losing the ball forever. He pulled back his leg, ready to strike with the power of 1,000 tiny, determined feet.
Robin?
Kai's voice was suddenly higher-pitched.
Abort! Abort mission! We got an unknown contact.
Robin froze, his foot hovering mid-kick. Unknown contact? In the Loxley PJs, unknown contact usually meant trouble, like a dog that looked friendly but wasn't. Or Brenda from Building F, who always tried to steal your snacks. He slowly turned, lowering his leg, and that's when he saw her. She was standing just outside the range of his potential kick, clutching a worn but surprisingly clean library book to her chest. Her hair, pulled back in neat braids, caught the hazy sunlight. She wasn't from around here. Robin knew everyone around here. Her clothes seemed less patched. Her shoes were tied properly, not with those frantic, last-minute knots his mom always fixed for him. She had big, brown eyes that looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and, was that amusement? A small smile played on her lips. Robin felt his carefully constructed fence conqueror persona crumble into a pile of nervous dust. His brain, which usually ran a mile a minute plotting minor schemes, suddenly felt like it was buffering.
Hey.
He managed, the single word feeling far too loud and squeaky. The girl's smile widened slightly.
Hi, are you trying to kick your ball over the fence?
Her voice was soft, like wind chimes made of polite words. Robin's face felt hot. Had she been watching? The failed, or rather aborted kick attempt?
No. No, definitely not.
He stammered, trying to sound cool and casual, which mostly resulted in him sounding like he was choking on a particularly dry cracker.
I was just, practicing my anti-gravity field.
Kai coughed beside him, trying to hide a snicker. The girl blinked.
Your anti-gravity field?
Yeah.
Robin seized onto the idea, his brain kicking back into gear, albeit a slightly misfiring gear.
It, prevents objects from being pulled down by, gravity. Very important research.
She tilted her head, her eyes sparkling.
Right, because kicking it over the fence would be much too simple.
Robin felt a new wave of heat rush to his ears. She knew. She totally knew. And she was laughing? Not at him exactly, but with that kind of gentle, knowing amusement that made his insides do a weird little flip-flop.
Well, sometimes you gotta take the scenic route,
he mumbled, shoving his hands in his pockets. He risked a glance at her face again. Up close, she had a small scattering of freckles across her nose. She looked nice. Really nice. Like something out of one of those fancy books she carried. Almost like a princess who got lost on the wrong side of the moat. He mentally dubbed her Mari. It just felt right. Mari took a small step closer, the library book still clutched to her chest.
My name's Mari. I'm visiting my aunt a few buildings down.
Robin,
he said quickly, maybe a little too quickly.
Robin Hood, like the guy.
Mary's eyebrows lifted slightly.
Like the one who steals from the rich and gives to the poor?
Robin puffed out his chest a little.
That's the one, though I'm still working on the stealing part and the giving part. Mostly just working on not losing my soccer ball over fences right now.
She smiled again, a genuine, lovely smile that made his stomach do another flip-flop, this time adding a few complicated gymnastic maneuvers.
Maybe you should just throw it over next time,
Mari suggested gently. Robin considered this. Throwing required less power, more aim. It was simpler. But where was the challenge? Where was the dramatic arc?
Nah,
he decided.
And kicking is more heroic. It's got more flair.
Mari giggled, a sound like tiny bells.
Okay, the heroic fence kicker. Well, good luck with your anti-gravity research, Robin Hood.
She started to turn, and panic seized Robin. She was leaving, and he hadn't... Ask her, a voice screamed in his head. Ask her if she wants to hang out sometime. Kick the ball, share a juice box, something. But the words got stuck. They felt too big, too important, too risky. Asking felt like trying to kick the whole world over the fence. What if she said no? What if she laughed differently? What if he messed up? He just stood there, hands still in his pockets, watching her walk away. Kai nudged him.
Dude, you gonna ask her name? Or if she wants to play? Or literally anything?
Kai whispered. Robin just shook his head, watching Mari disappear around the corner of Building J. Nah, he mumbled, feeling deflated, like his soccer ball.
Maybe next time, when my anti-gravity field is perfected.
Kai just sighed dramatically.
Hey, little man. You look like you just saw a ghost. Or lost your last quarter.
A deep, rumbling voice said from behind them. Robin and Kai spun around. Towering over them was a kid who couldn't be much older than them, maybe 10, but he was built like a small brick wall that hadn't finished growing yet. He wasn't just tall, he was wide. Even at this age, he was significantly bigger than any other kid in the projects. His face was open and kind, despite his imposing size.
Hey, LJ.
Robin said, instantly recognizing him. LJ lived a few buildings over. They hadn't talked much before, mostly just seen each other around. LJ, whose full name was something complicated and long that nobody used, just went by LJ because, as he'd once explained with a shrug, it's easier on my vocal cords. He was known for being quiet, but having an almost preternatural ability to find lost things and scare off older kids who tried to bully the younger ones, usually just by standing there.
Rough day?
LJ asked, glancing from Robin's face to the menacing fence.
Just gravitational anomalies.
Robin muttered, still a bit distracted by the memory of Omari's smile. LJ blinked his large eyes slowly.
Right. Those can be a real drag.
He paused, then looked at Robin properly.
Saw you eyeing that fence. Tried kicking your ball over it, huh?
Robin felt his face warm up again. It seemed everyone knew his aborted mission.
Maybe.
Lost a few over that one myself.
LJ said with a sigh that sounded like a mini earthquake.
The trenches take their toll.
The trenches. That's what they called the project sometimes. Not just the Loxley PJs, but the whole struggle. The worn down everything, the constant hustle, the feeling of being a little bit stuck. LJ understood. He lived it too. He knew about the leaky roofs, the sirens at night, the sometimes empty cupboards.
Yeah,
Robin said, a different kind of understanding passing between them.
the trenches.
LJ looked at the soccer ball.
You want a hand getting it over? Throwing, maybe? Less risk of gravitational anomalies.
Robin hesitated for only a second. This wasn't about needing help. He could probably still get the ball over eventually. This was about connection. LJ wasn't like Kai or Timmy. He was bigger, quieter, carried a different kind of weight, literally and figuratively. But there was something solid and trustworthy about him. Something loyal.
Nah, it's cool.
Robin said, picking up the ball.
Maybe later. Right now. I think I need to work on my social skills.
He glanced back in the direction Mari had gone. LJ followed his gaze, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he gave a small, understanding nod.
Ah, the toughest fences ain't always made of chain link, huh?
Robin grinned.
Tell me about it.
Well, if you need backup for social anomalies or gravity issues, let me know.
LJ said, his deep voice surprisingly gentle.
I'll be around, usually near the big oak tree, trying to teach a squirrel to play chess.
Robin laughed.
A squirrel? Good luck with that.
Hey, you never know.
LJ shrugged, a movement that seemed to shift the air around him.
Someone's gotta try and bring a little culture to the trenches.
And with that, LJ gave another slow nod and ambled off towards the mentioned oak tree, his footsteps heavy and steady. Robin watched him go, a new feeling settling in his chest. He'd met Mary, the almost princess from beyond the project's edge, and felt the dizzying confusion of a first crush. He'd also just connected with LJ, the gentle giant, who somehow just got it. Got the trenches, got the struggle, and offered help without being asked. Maybe, just maybe, being rich wasn't the only kind of wealth you could find in the Loxley PJs. Maybe friends, ones who understood gravity, social skills, and the subtle art of squirrel chess, were a good start too. Even if asking a girl to hang out felt scarier than facing a dragon. Chapter 3. The Family Hustle and Uncle Blame It On You. The air in apartment 3B of Building E always smelled like Mrs. Hood's famous, slightly too spicy but perfectly comforting stew, mixed with the faint scent of laundry detergent and well-worn furniture. 9-year-old Robin sat at the Formica kitchen table, the kind with the little sparkles embedded in the surface, carefully tracing the lines of a superhero comic book with his finger. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of sunlight that fought its way through the slightly grimy window pane. His mom, a woman with eyes that saw everything and a smile that could melt glaciers, most of the time, hummed softly as she stirred the stew. She was a force of nature in a worn apron, juggling work, bills, and raising a kid in the Loxley PJs with a grace that Robin didn't fully appreciate yet, but knew was nothing short of heroic.
Almost ready, sweetie,
she said, without even turning around. How did she do that? Mom vision, probably. Another superpower he needed to figure out.
Smells awesome, Mom.
Robin replied, genuinely. Even on tough days, her stew was a win. The peaceful domestic scene was shattered by the arrival of Hurricane Earl, also known as Uncle Earl.
Brenda, you home?
Uncle Earl's voice boomed from the small entryway. He was a man built like a slightly deflated balloon animal, all sudden angles and unpredictable movements. His usual state of being seemed to be on the verge of an argument.
Earl, inside voice!
Mom called back, though she already had a weary, knowing look on her face. Uncle Earl shuffled in, followed by his twin teenagers, Ray and Ray. At 14, they were in that awkward stage where they were too cool for kid stuff, but not quite adult enough to escape being dragged along by their dad. Ray was glued to his phone, earbuds firmly in place, a permanent expression of mild annoyance on his face. Ray, dressed in ripped jeans and a band t-shirt, chewed gum with aggressive precision, surveying the apartment like it was an alien landscape.
Inside voice? I am using my inside voice.
Uncle Earl insisted, despite the fact that his voice was currently rattling the ceramic salt shaker on the kitchen counter. He threw his hands up.
See? This is what I'm talking about. Nobody ever listens.
Mom just sighed softly, stirring the stew a little faster.
Anyway,
Uncle Earl continued, spotting Robin at the table.
Robin. Good. You're here.
Robin tensed slightly. When Uncle Earl started with, "Good, you're here," it usually meant Robin was about to be blamed for something he didn't do, hadn't seen, and possibly hadn't even heard about yet.
Hey, Uncle Earl.
Robin said, carefully closing his comic book. Uncle Earl pointed a finger, his face immediately contorting into an expression of aggrieved accusation.
You were on the court earlier, right?
Oh no, the fence incident. Had Uncle Earl seen? Was he going to blame him for gravitational anomalies?
Yeah.
Robin admitted cautiously.
Aha!
Uncle Earl slammed a hand on the table, making the salt shaker jump. Ray didn't even flinch, his eyes still glued to his phone screen. Ray blew a bubble, popped it, and raised a skeptical eyebrow.
I knew it! You left that ball out. I almost tripped on it coming back from Mr. Henderson's.
Robin blinked.
What ball? The soccer ball? It's right.
He looked around. It was leaning against the fridge.
It's right there, Uncle Earl.
Uncle Earl waved a dismissive hand.
Doesn't matter where it is now. It was out there. I distinctly remember seeing a round object of potential peril. Could have broken my ankle. Then what?
He jabbed a finger towards Mom.
Then who pays the medical bills, huh? You gonna pay them, Brenda?
Mom finally turned from the stove, holding the stirring spoon like a tiny wooden scepter of reason.
Earl, the ball was leaning against the fence. You'd have to be walking backwards with your eyes closed to trip over it.
See?
Uncle Earl spun towards Mom, his indignation flaring.
She blames me. I tell you, Robin, it's always the same. You could park your car, put it in park, emergency brake on, solid concrete wall in front and back, and someone like your mother would still find a way to hit it with their own car and then swear you backed into them.
Ray mumbled something from behind his earbuds that sounded suspiciously like,
"Pretty sure that's a physical impossibility, Dad."
Ray rolled her eyes and leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed.
Seriously, Dad? A soccer ball? Pretty sure the biggest hazard out there is Brenda's prize-winning petunias staging a revolt.
Don't you start, young lady.
Uncle Earl snapped, momentarily distracted from the soccer ball conspiracy.
Always got something smart to say, you two. Get off that phone, Ray. And you...
He pointed at Ray.
Stop chewing gum like a farm animal.
Ray finally looked up, pulling one earbud out.
Farm animals chew cud, Dad. It's different.
It's all the same noise pollution.
Uncle Earl retorted, pacing the small kitchen area.
Just like that dripping faucet. Brenda, you gonna fix that faucet? It's driving me crazy.
I've called Mr. Peterson 3 times, Earl.
Mom said patiently.
He said he'll get to it when he gets to it.
When he gets to it. We're living in a perpetual water torture chamber here.
Uncle Earl exclaimed, gesturing wildly.
Could cause structural damage. The ceiling could collapse right on top of me.
Robin just watched the familiar spectacle. This was Uncle Earl. He was like a perpetual motion machine fueled by misplaced blame and minor inconveniences. He could turn a slightly scuffed shoe into a federal crime. He once blamed Robin for a traffic jam downtown, claiming Robin's positive attitude had somehow altered the flow of traffic miles away. Despite the chaos, there was a strange kind of rhythm to it. Mom handled it with practiced calm. Ray, though older and cooler, had clearly witnessed this show countless times and had developed their own coping mechanisms. Ray with his phone, Ray with her sarcastic commentary. Ray finally spoke up, her voice dry.
So, are we here for the stew, or just to listen to the chronicles of unfairness according to Earl?
Uncle Earl stopped his pacing mid-stride. His eyes widened slightly, as if remembering something important.
The stew! Right. And to check on my favorite nephew.
He suddenly slapped Robin on the back, a little harder than necessary, making Robin cough.
How's my little millionaire in training doing?
Fine, Uncle Earl.
Robin wheezed.
Still dreaming of all that gold, huh?
Uncle Earl chuckled, a loud booming sound that seemed out of place after his recent tirade.
Well, don't forget your old Uncle Earl. When you're swimming in diamonds, I'll need a solid gold lifeboat just in case the structural damage from that faucet finally gives way.
Robin managed a small smile. Uncle Earl was a lot. He was loud, he was unfair, he was a master of deflection, but he was family. And somewhere beneath the bluster, there was, well, maybe not gold, but maybe a tiny speck of something that resembled affection, probably buried under a mountain of grievances. Mom dished up the stew, the rich aroma filling the kitchen. The argument about the soccer ball and the faucet seemed to dissipate into the steam, replaced by the more immediate, comforting reality of food. Ray put away their distractions, mostly. Uncle Earl, surprisingly, quieted down a bit, focusing on his bowl. Sitting there, with the leaky faucet dripping, the distant city sounds filtering in, his mom humming, his cousins being their cool, distant selves, and his uncle being, well, him. Robin felt the complicated, messy, undeniable pull of family. Even in the trenches, even with Uncle Earl's unique brand of chaos, this was home. He might want to be rich to build schools and create jobs, and maybe even buy his mom a house without a dripping faucet. But he knew, deep down, that no amount of gold could replace the loud, unpredictable, sometimes infuriating, but always their family in apartment 3B. Even if Uncle Earl would probably blame him for any spills. Chapter 4. The Weight of the Trenches and the Power of the Pulpit. The afternoon sun, usually a welcome presence in the Loxley PJs, felt heavy and hot today. It beat down on the cracked concrete, making the air shimmer above the asphalt. Robin sat on the stoop of Building E, kicking aimlessly at a loose piece of concrete with the toe of his sneaker. The buzzing of the trapped fly seemed to amplify the general feeling of being stuck. Kai and Tiny Tim were attempting to fix a flat tire on an old bicycle nearby, their efforts involving more grunting and groaning than actual progress. LJ sat a little distance away under the meager shade of a sickly-looking tree, sketching something in a worn notebook.
This tire is flatter than Uncle Earl's last business venture,
Kai declared, wiping sweat from his brow.
Which one was that again?
Tiny Tim asked, holding a wrench upside down.
The gourmet gumbo stand on wheels that only sold lukewarm water?
Nah, that was the one before last,
Kai said.
The last one was Earl's Easy Bake Earnings, selling burnt cookies from his apartment window.
Robin didn't laugh. He loved his uncle, in his own chaotic way. But hearing him talked about like that, even by his friends, just added to the weight. He knew his mom worried about money constantly. He'd seen her looking at bills late at night, her brow furrowed, her shoulders slumped. He'd heard the hushed phone calls about needing extra hours, about things breaking down that they couldn't afford to fix right away. Just last week, Mrs. Rodriguez, their usually vibrant neighbor, had been looking particularly down. Her oven had finally died, and without it, she couldn't bake the empanadas she sold to make a little extra cash. Robin had seen the worry in her eyes, the way she kept looking at the silent, cold appliance. That's why he wanted to be rich, not just for solid gold toilets, though, admittedly, that was still a pretty cool image, but to fix things like broken ovens, to make sure Mrs. Rodriguez could bake her empanadas, to make sure his mom didn't have to worry about bills, to give Kai a bike with tires that didn't instantly go flat. He picked up a small stone and threw it lightly at a lamppost, the sound a dull thud.
It just sucks, you know?
He said, more to himself than his friends. Kai and Tiny Tim stopped their bike wrestling. LJ looked up from his notebook.
What sucks, Robin?
LJ's deep voice was quiet, but it carried.
All of it.
Robin said, gesturing vaguely around the projects.
Things breaking, people struggling, always having to figure out how to make $1 out of 15 cents.
He looked at his friends, their faces marked by the same realities.
We got good people here, really good people. Why is it so hard?
Tiny Tim sat down, looking thoughtful.
Yeah, my little sister needed new shoes last month, and Mom had to work like 3 extra shifts just to get them. Her feet were getting all scraped up.
Kai kicked the flat tire in frustration.
And this stupid bike? I just want to ride to the decent basketball court near the park. But nope, flat.
Robin felt a pang in his chest. It wasn't fair. They were just kids. They should be worrying about homework. Well, maybe not worrying, but at least thinking about it. And video games, and who had the best superhero action figures. Not about money and broken things. He stood up, feeling a surge of that familiar determination.
That's why,
he said, his voice gaining a little strength.
That's why I gotta do it. Get rich, not just for me, for all of us.
He remembered Mary's gentle smile, the promise of something different. He thought of LJ's quiet strength, Kai and Timmy's unwavering friendship. He thought of his mom's tired but hopeful eyes. He wouldn't forget where he came from. The trenches were part of him, but they wouldn't be the only part.
Yeah, well,
Kai grumbled, back to wrestling with the bike chain.
Maybe while you're getting rich, you can invent a self-inflating tire.
Robin grinned, the heaviness lifting slightly.
Already on the drawing board, buddy. Right after the solid gold ambulance for Uncle Earl's hypothetical tripping injuries.
LJ let out a low chuckle from under the tree.
Gonna need a big drawing board for that.
Robin? Kai? Timmy?
It was Mom standing at the bottom of the stoop, looking impossibly put together despite the heat.
Come on, time to get ready. Preacher Man Tuck's sermon is going to be a good one today. I can feel it.
Going to church with Mom was always an experience. It wasn't just about sitting quietly and listening, which Robin found challenging on the best of days. It was about the community, the singing that shook the rafters, and, most importantly, Preacher Man Tuck. Preacher Man Tuck was a force of nature even bigger than Uncle Earl. He was a whirlwind of energy, charisma, and sweat. with a voice that could go from a rumbling whisper to a sky-splitting roar in a single sentence. His sermons were less about quiet contemplation and more about audience participation, call and response, and life lessons delivered with the comedic timing of a seasoned stand-up. They slid into a pew near the back. The air inside the church was cooler, filled with the scent of old wood, polish, and a hint of the potluck dinner promised after the service. The congregation was buzzing, fanning themselves with church programs. Preacher Man Tuck, standing at the pulpit in a suit that seemed slightly too small for his booming personality, wiped his brow with a flourish.
Can I get an amen?
He bellowed into the microphone, which seemed to crackle in protest. Amen. The congregation roared back, Mom included, her voice strong.
I said, can I get an amen?
He tried again, leaning into the mic. This time it was louder, more enthusiastic. Preacher Man Tuck grinned, unfazed.
There we go. Now, my brothers and sisters, let me tell you something. We all walking this road, ain't we?
Yes, preacher.
Voices called out.
And sometimes that road feels like it's paved with nothing but potholes and Uncle Earl's burnt cookies, ain't I right?
Robin's head shot up. Had he just mentioned Uncle Earl's burnt cookies?
Uh-huh.
Preacher Man Tuck nodded emphatically.
You think you're going one way, right?
He leaned forward, his eyes scanning the crowd, landing on Robin for a split second with a knowing twinkle.
Got your map out. Got your destination in mind. Maybe you think you're headed for... Oh, I don't know. An island made of gold.
Robin stared, wide-eyed. How did he know?
But then...
Preacher Man Tuck's voice rose.
Life throws you a curveball. Or maybe you trip over a perfectly innocent soccer ball that someone clearly left out to get you.
More laughter, louder this time, specifically directed at the back where Robin sat. Uncle Earl, who had arrived late with Ray and was standing near the back wall, looking deeply offended, sputtered.
Now hold on a minute.
Earl, not during the sermon.
Someone in the front row called out. Preacher Man Tuck held up a hand.
Peace, my brother Earl. I'm just saying. Sometimes things happen. Things that ain't even your fault. Though.
He added in a stage whisper that carried through the microphone.
Sometimes, maybe, just maybe, you gotta look where you're going.
The congregation erupted in laughter again, clearly familiar with Uncle Earl's particular brand of victimhood. Uncle Earl folded his arms, muttering under his breath.
My point is...
Preacher Man Tuck boomed, regaining control.
Life in the trenches. It's hard. It throws dirt in your face. It puts holes in your shoes. It makes your oven quit just when you need it most.
Robin felt a lump form in his throat. He wasn't just talking about ovens. He was talking about Mrs. Rodriguez. He was talking about them.
Well, you know what else is in the trenches?
Preacher Man Tuck's voice softened slightly, becoming warm and encouraging.
You know what else is in the Loxley PJs?
He paused, letting the question hang in the air. The only sound the gentle hum of the congregation and the distant, fading buzz of the trapped fly.
Heart,
he declared, his voice swelling with passion.
Community. People who look out for each other. People who share their last biscuit, even if it's a little burnt.
He glanced pointedly towards Uncle Earl, who just grumbled louder.
You got strength here.
Preacher Man Tuck thumped the pulpit lightly.
You got resilience. You got kids.
He looked directly at Robin again, his eyes kind and full of understanding.
Kids with dreams bigger than these buildings. Kids who want to do good, who want to help, who want to make things better.
Robin felt a blush creep up his neck. He shrank down slightly in his seat, but he couldn't look away from the preacher.
And that,
Preacher Man Tuck said, his voice ringing with conviction.
That ain't something you can buy with gold. That's something you build. With love, with hard work, with knowing that even when things are tough, you ain't alone.
He finished his sermon, his chest heaving slightly. The church was silent for a moment. Then a wave of amens, preach it, and applause washed over him. Robin felt lighter. The weight that had been pressing down on him seemed to have lifted. replaced by a quiet warmth in his chest. Preacher Man Tuck, in his own wild, funny way, had understood. He hadn't dismissed Robin's dreams of wealth, but he'd reminded him of the wealth he already had, the love of his family, the loyalty of his friends, the strength of his community. As the congregation stood to sing, Robin stood too, feeling taller than he had a few minutes ago. He might be just a kid from the Loxley PJs with big, maybe even crazy dreams. But he wasn't just a kid, he was Robin Hood. And maybe, just maybe, the first step to changing the world wasn't about gold or anti-gravity fields, but about remembering the heart of the trenches and knowing you had a whole community cheering you on, even if they were laughing at your uncle's expense. Chapter 5. The Bus, the Bully, and the Benjamin. The yellow beast of a school bus smelled like stale exhaust fumes, questionable floor cleaner, and the faint, lingering scent of old banana peels. Robin, now officially 10 years old and navigating the terrifying new landscape of middle school, wedged himself into a cracked vinyl seat next to LJ. Even at this age, LJ took up a considerable amount of space, his backpack looking like a small, overburdened donkey resting on his lap.
Man, this bus smells like sadness and desperation,
Robin muttered, trying to open the stiff window next to him. It wouldn't budge, of course. Nothing on this bus ever worked the way it was supposed to. LJ just nodded solemnly, peering out the window with his usual quiet intensity.
Could be worse. Could smell like broccoli.
Robin shuddered.
Okay, you got a point there. Broccoli is the true enemy.
The bus lurched forward with a groan of tortured metal. Kids jostled in the aisle, shouting greetings and complaints. Robin leaned his head back against the hard seat, watching the familiar streets of the Loxley PJs blur past. The worn buildings, the hopeful splashes of graffiti, the stoops where old folks sat and watched the world go by. Home. As they stopped at another corner, a kid Robin didn't recognize climbed aboard. He had on sneakers that looked suspiciously new, jeans without holes, unless they were the intentional, expensive kind, and a backpack that seemed to have actual structural integrity, not just duct tape holding it together. He scanned the bus with an air of mild distaste before spotting an empty seat across the aisle from Robin and LJ. He slid into the seat with a sigh, adjusting his perfectly clean backpack. He looked at Robin, then at LJ, his gaze lingering for a moment on LJ's enormous backpack and Robin's slightly faded superhero t-shirt.
Hey!
The kid said, his voice a little higher pitched than Robin expected, but with an underlying tone of, well, something Robin couldn't quite place yet. Condescension, maybe?
Hey.
Robin replied, giving him a cautious nod.
Name's JP?
The kid said, puffing his chest out slightly.
Just moved here from, somewhere better.
Robin and LJ exchanged a quick glance.
Somewhere better,
Robin repeated, a hint of amusement in his voice.
Like the moon. 'Cause this bus feels like it's on its way there sometimes.
JP didn't laugh. His expression remained serious, almost scrutinizing. He looked around the bus again, his nose wrinkling.
No, like a neighborhood with sidewalks that aren't cracked, and houses with more than one coat of paint, and buses that don't smell like old gym socks.
Robin felt that familiar heat creeping up his neck. Okay, so JP wasn't just stating facts about his old neighborhood. He was definitely taking a not-so-subtle jab at theirs.
Yeah, well,
Robin said, trying to keep his tone light.
We like our sidewalks with character, gives you something to trip over, keeps you on your toes, builds resilience.
He grinned, trying to make it sound like a joke. JP just stared at him, unimpressed. He looked at LJ, who was still silently observing him.
And, what about your friend? Does he also enjoy falling on cracked concrete?
Before LJ could respond, which usually involved a very slow, deliberate one-word answer, Robin jumped in.
LJ enjoys contemplating the structural integrity of urban infrastructure. It's a hobby.
JP scoffed, a short, sharp sound.
Right. Look, it's obvious you guys aren't exactly rolling in it.
He gestured vaguely at their clothes, their backpacks, the bus itself.
Coming from here, the projects, right?
The casual way he said, the projects, like it was a dirty word, made Robin's fists clench slightly.
Yeah,
Robin said, his voice losing its lightness.
We're from the Loxley PJs and proud of it.
JP leaned back in his seat, a smug look spreading across his face.
Must be tough, always having to, scrape by.
He reached into his front pocket and pulled out a wad of folded bills. He didn't count it or even unfold it fully, just fanned the edges slightly, letting the crisp green peek out.
See? This is what happens when you live somewhere decent. Money, just lying around. Practically.
Robin stared at the money. It wasn't a huge wad, but it was more cash than he'd seen in one place that wasn't behind Mr. Sterling's bodega counter. It was opportunity. It was broken ovens getting fixed. It was new shoes for Tiny Tim's sister. It was a bike that didn't need constant repair. He felt a different kind of heat now, not from embarrassment, but from a sudden, intense spark of something he hadn't felt quite like this before. Resourcefulness. Daring. The Robin Hood instinct kicking in.
Wow,
Robin said, forcing a smile that felt a little too wide.
Look at all that green stuff. Must be heavy carrying all that around. Don't you worry about losing it?
JP shrugged, tucking the money back into his pocket, with a casual air that somehow made it even more annoying.
Nah, I'm careful. And anyway, there's always more where that came from.
He looked at them again, that same condescending look.
Unlike you guys.
The rest of the bus ride was silent between them. Robin felt a strange mix of anger, resentment, and a growing sense of purpose. JP's bragging hadn't just been annoying, it had been a challenge, a reminder of the divide he desperately wanted to bridge. Later that day, in social studies class, the universe, in its infinite and occasionally ironic wisdom, placed JP 2 rows ahead of Robin and LJ. The classroom was the usual mix of fidgeting kids, bored expressions, and the low hum of the fluorescent lights. Mr. Harrison was droning on about ancient civilizations, a topic that held approximately 0% of the class's attention. Robin was doodling in his notebook, sketching a superhero figure with a cape made of dollar bills. LJ was, as usual, quietly observing everything, his gaze steady and unblinking. JP shifted in his seat, pulling something out of his pocket. Probably a fancy pen, or another wad of cash to subtly flash. As he did, a folded bundle of green paper slipped from his grasp and fluttered silently to the floor between the desks. Robin saw it. It landed right near his foot. That wad of money, JP's just lying around cash. His heart started to beat a little faster. It wasn't on purpose. He hadn't meant to see it, but now that he had... He glanced at JP. He was oblivious, rummaging in his pocket. Mr. Harrison was still lost in the world of pyramids and pharaohs. Nobody else seemed to have noticed. This was it. Opportunity, landing right at his feet. Not treasure, not gold, but something real. Something that could help. Something that belonged to the kid who just mocked him for being poor. Robin's mind raced. He couldn't just pick it up. Someone would see. He needed a distraction, a big one, a memorable one. He nudged LJ's massive knee under the desk. LJ looked at him, his expression questioning. Robin leaned closer and whispered urgently, his voice low and conspiratorial.
LJ, I need you to cause a scene.
LJ's eyebrows, thick and dark, furrowed slightly. He tilted his head.
A scene?
Yeah, turn up the class, Robin whispered back, feeling a surge of nervous energy and reckless determination. Something big, loud, make everyone look at you. LJ considered this, his eyes scanning the room. He wasn't usually one for drawing attention. He preferred to be the quiet, watchful presence.
Why?
LJ whispered back. Robin met his gaze, his eyes gleaming with a mix of mischief and serious intent.
Because that kid, JP, he dropped his money, a whole wad.
He glanced down at the folded bills near his foot.
I saw it, and I'm gonna relocate it.
LJ's eyes widened slightly. He looked from Robin to the money, then back to Robin.
You gonna liberate that cash?
LJ asked, his voice still low. Exactly, Robin confirmed. Think of it as a temporary redistribution of wealth, from the boastful to the potential benefactor. He grinned.
But I need cover. Total chaos.
He leaned in even closer, making a quick, bold offer.
You cause a scene, a good one, and I'll cut you in. 20%. My first official profit sharing.
LJ blinked. 20% for causing trouble? This was new. It was also a lot more interesting than ancient civilizations. He looked at the money again, then at Robin's determined face. He trusted Robin. Robin was a dreamer, maybe a little wild, but he had a good heart, and he hated seeing people struggle. LJ gave a slow, deliberate nod.
Okay, a scene. What kind of scene?
Robin thought fast. Something loud, something disruptive, something LJ-sized. I don't know, Robin whispered back, his excitement building. Just be you. Be big, be unexpected, make noise, knock something over, pretend you saw a ghost, just make Mr. Harrison forget what year the pyramids were built. He reached into his backpack and quickly scribbled something on a small piece of paper.
Meet me here,
he whispered, pressing the paper into LJ's hand.
After school, by the old, overgrown baseball field behind the park. You know the place?
LJ nodded. Everyone knew the old, overgrown baseball field. It was where things went to rust.
Got it?
LJ confirmed. Robin gave him a quick, confident nod.
All right, on my count. 3, 2, 1, go.
A spider.
LJ bellowed, standing up so abruptly his desk wobbled precariously. His voice was so loud it seemed to vibrate the very air in the classroom. Mr. Harrison jumped, dropping his chalk. Kids shrieked, startled. JP spun around in his seat, his eyes wide.
A spider?
Mr. Harrison stammered, peering around nervously.
Where? What?
Right there.
LJ roared, pointing a massive finger at the floor, nowhere near the money, but creating maximum panic.
The biggest spider I have ever seen. It had little hats on its legs.
Chaos erupted. Kids were standing on chairs, peering under desks, some genuinely terrified, others just enjoying the break from Mr. Harrison's lecture. JP was staring at LJ with a mixture of fear and bewilderment. In the midst of the pandemonium, while everyone was focused on the imaginary spider with tiny hats, Robin moved, smoothly, quickly. He subtly extended his foot, nudging the folded money towards himself. Then, with a practiced, almost invisible motion he'd perfected retrieving lost marbles under furniture, he bent down slightly, scooped up the wad of cash, and tucked it into the inner pocket of his jacket. He stood up straight, trying to look as panicked as everyone else, though his heart was thumping with a mix of fear and triumph.
LJ, where is it?
Mr. Harrison was now standing on his own chair, peering over the desks.
It went behind the teacher's desk.
LJ yelled, conveniently directing attention away from Robin's area. Mr. Harrison cautiously approached his desk, peering down.
I don't see anything, LJ. Are you sure?
Positive.
LJ insisted, though his voice was now beginning to crack slightly from the effort of yelling.
It was ninja-like, vanished into thin air, probably plotting its next move.
The initial panic began to subside, replaced by wary confusion and a few nervous giggles. Mr. Harrison slowly got down from his chair, looking ruffled. All right, Everyone calm down, he said, trying to regain control. It seems Mr. LJ may have had a vivid hallucination. He shot a stern look at LJ, who just shrugged innocently, looking like a giant, slightly confused puppy. Robin sank back into his seat, trying to slow his breathing. The money was tucked safely away. He had the meeting spot. LJ had delivered a performance worthy of an Oscar. He glanced over at JP, who was still looking pale and shaken. JP reached for his front pocket, his eyes widening slightly as he realized something was missing. He patted his pocket frantically, his face turning from pale to a blotchy red. Robin looked away quickly, a flicker of something, not guilt, not exactly, passing through him. He didn't want JP's money just because he was a jerk, but he needed it. Or the people he cared about needed it. It was for a good cause, right? From the boastful to the potential benefactor. As the bell rang, signaling the end of class, a fresh wave of noise erupted. Robin grabbed his backpack, exchanging a quick, charged look with LJ. LJ gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. The mission was on. Robin hurried out of the classroom, adrenaline still coursing through him. He didn't look back. He had a meeting to get to, and a forest to run to, or at least an overgrown baseball field that felt like an escape hatch from the concrete jungle. He pushed through the crowded hallways, past the lockers, past the shouts of other kids. His mind was already racing ahead, planning, calculating. This wasn't just stealing, this was a prototype. The first arrow from the Loxley PJs' own Robin Hood. He burst out of the school doors and didn't stop running until the familiar buildings of the projects were behind him, and the unkempt wild green of the abandoned field stretched out before him, waiting. He was in the forest now, and he had the Benjamin. The game had just changed. Chapter 6. The Spoils, the Splash, and the Sprint. The late afternoon sun cast long, stretched-out shadows across the overgrown baseball field. The air was thick with the smell of cut grass and damp earth. Robin paced near the rusted backstop, kicking at loose pebbles, his heart still hammering from the rush of the classroom heist. The wad of crumpled bills felt heavy and significant in his jacket pocket. He looked up as LJ emerged from the trees bordering the field, moving faster than Robin had ever seen him. LJ's chest was heaving slightly, but his usual quiet demeanor was back.
Robin,
LJ said, his voice a low rumble.
LJ.
Robin grinned, pulling the money out of his pocket. It wasn't as much as he'd imagined when JP was flashing it, maybe $80 total, but it felt like a fortune.
Operation Ninja Spider was a success.
LJ managed a small smile.
It was chaotic. Mr. Harrison almost had a heart attack.
Hey, builds character,
Robin quipped, carefully smoothing out the bills.
Alright, remember the deal. 20% for the Distraction Master.
He counted out $16, folding them neatly and handing them to LJ.
Here you go. First cut of the, community fund.
LJ took the money, looking at it with a kind of quiet awe. $16 for yelling about a spider.
Wow, that's more than I make helping Mr. Peterson with groceries in a month.
Robin clapped him on the shoulder.
See, this is how it works. We look out for each other.
He paused, looking at the remaining money. 80 minus 16 left $64, his share.
Okay, now my half.
He carefully counted out $32.
Alright, this,
he declared, putting half of his money into his jacket pocket.
Is my pocket money for, important stuff, like tactical snacks.
He carefully folded the other $32.
And this,
he said, zipping it into a small, hidden pocket inside his backpack,
is savings for the future, for the solid gold toilet fund.
He looked at LJ, who was still holding his $16, turning them over in his massive hands.
So,
Robin said, a new idea sparking in his eyes.
We got money. What do we do with it?
LJ shrugged.
Buy stuff?
Better than stuff,
Robin exclaimed.
We throw a party.
LJ blinked.
A party?
Yeah, for everyone.
This wasn't just about having money. It was about sharing the spoils, spreading a little bit of that unexpected wealth around the Loxley PJs. Remember that open area next to the old indoor pool? The one nobody uses anymore?
Yeah.
LJ said slowly.
It's kinda spooky.
Perfect,
Robin declared.
We tell everyone to ditch school tomorrow afternoon. We get drinks, we get snacks. We turn it into the biggest, best party the PJs have ever seen.
LJ looked hesitant.
Ditch school? Isn't that bad?
Bad?
Robin scoffed, though a tiny voice in his head was whispering the same thing.
Nah, it's liberating. It's a spontaneous act of joy. Besides, what are they gonna do? Give us extra homework on ancient civilizations? I'll take that risk.
He grinned.
And with this money,
he held up his pocket cash and LJ's share.
We can buy enough snacks to make everyone forget they're supposed to be learning about mummies.
He looked at LJ expectantly.
You in? My loyal right-hand man? My partner in party planning?
LJ looked from the money in his hand to Robin's eager face. It was reckless. It was probably a terrible idea, but it was for everyone, and Robin's enthusiasm was infectious. LJ slowly nodded.
All right, I'm in. But no broccoli snacks.
Robin slapped him on the back again, carefully avoiding the money pocket.
Deal. Operation Splash and Snack is a go.
The next day was a whirlwind. Whispers spread through the projects like wildfire. Party, pool, ditch school, be there. Robin and LJ, with their combined funds, now $52 total, after Robin added his pocket cash, hit the corner store, loading up on chips, sugary drinks, and enough candy to fuel a small army. Mr. Sterling at the bodega gave them a suspicious look, but took their money. By early afternoon, the open area next to the old, slightly eerie indoor pool was buzzing. Kids from all over the Loxley PJs had shown up. The air, usually quiet and empty, was filled with laughter, shouting, and the energetic thumping of music playing from someone's portable speaker. Robin, standing near a makeshift table laden with snacks and drinks, felt a swell of pride. He'd done this. They had done this. Kai and Tiny Tim were already digging into the chips, their faces covered in orange dust. Ray, and even the usually detached Ray from Uncle Earl's apartment, were there, leaning against a wall, looking slightly amused. And then Robin saw her. Marie. She was standing near the edge of the gathering, looking a little hesitant, but a small smile was playing on her lips as she watched the other kids. She wasn't wearing the new-looking clothes from before, but something simpler, more relaxed. Robin felt that familiar flip-flop in his stomach. She came. To their party. This was his chance. He took a deep breath, grabbed 2 cans of soda, and made his way towards her, navigating through the laughing, dancing crowd.
Hey, Mary,
he said, trying to sound cool and not like his heart was attempting to escape his chest. He offered her a soda.
Didn't expect to see the, library expert here.
Mari took the soda, her smile widening.
Hey, Robin. I heard there was an unscheduled community gathering, and maybe snacks.
She raised an eyebrow playfully.
Is this part of your anti-gravity research?
Robin chuckled, feeling a little more at ease.
Nah, this is phase 2. Community cohesion and snack distribution. More complex than anti-gravity, honestly. Requires careful calorie calculations.
Well, it looks like a success. Everyone seems to be cohesive.
Yeah,
Robin agreed, looking around at the kids enjoying themselves.
Feels pretty good, actually.
He paused, gathering his courage. This was it. He had to say something. Something more than snack calculations.
So, I was thinking, maybe after the party, or sometime, you know, when you're not busy with advanced reading.
He fumbled for the words, his brain buffering again. Ask her to hang out, alone, like a date.
Maybe you could teach me how to avoid tripping over things since my anti-gravity field is still in development?
It wasn't asking her out, not really, but it was a start. A tragically awkward start. Mari looked at him, her brown eyes sparkling with amusement and something else. Something that made the flip-flops in his stomach do a triple somersault.
Maybe.
She said softly.
If you promise to teach me about tactical snacks.
Deal,
Robin said quickly, grinning like an idiot. Success. A tiny, awkward, glorious success. The sudden, piercing wail of the siren cut through the party noise like a knife. The music died instantly. Laughter turned to gasps. Kids froze, their eyes wide with alarm.
Beat it!
Someone yelled. Cops! Panic erupted. Kids scattered in every direction, dropping snacks, tripping over each other, a wave of terrified children surging away from the source of the siren. Robin's heart leaped into his throat. Police? Here? Now? He grabbed Mari's arm instinctively.
Come on.
They started running with the crowd, towards the back of the open area, away from the flashing blue and red lights that were now visible at the entrance. The concrete was rough under their feet. The air was thick with the sound of panicked breathing and pounding footsteps. He glanced behind him for a second, just to see if Kai and Timmy were okay, if LJ was following. And that's when he saw him. LJ. He was near the entrance, caught in the initial wave of police officers rushing into the area. And one of the officers had a hand on LJ's arm, guiding him forward. It looked like LJ was with them, guiding them. Robin's breath hitched. Number LJ wouldn't. Not loyal LJ. Not his right-hand man. He didn't have time to process it. He had to run. He pulled Mary along, dodging other fleeing kids, scrambling over a low wall, heading for the familiar, tangled alleys and shortcuts of the projects.
This way,
he yelled, his voice thin with exertion and panic.
The cut-through by Mrs. Gable's garden.
They ran past clotheslines, dodged overflowing trash cans, scrambled through narrow gaps between buildings. Robin's lungs burned. His legs ached. But the sound of the sirens, and worse, the thought of LJ, it pushed him faster. He risked another glance back as they rounded a corner. And there he was, LJ, running. He was a giant figure, easily visible even in the dimming light. And he was running towards them. Behind him, the police were following. It looked like LJ was chasing him, pointing, yelling something Robin couldn't make out over the blood pounding in his ears and the insistent sirens. Get him! Was that what he was yelling? Get Robin Hood! Number, it couldn't be. There had to be a mistake. LJ was trying to reach him, to warn him, to help him. But the visual evidence was damning. LJ running with the police, gesturing towards him. Fear, sharp and cold, pierced through Robin's panic. He was being chased by the police and by his best friend. He didn't understand. It didn't make sense, but he had to escape. He couldn't get caught, not with the money, not after everything.
Almost there,
he gasped to Mari, pulling her around another corner. They were heading towards the edge of the projects, towards a series of narrow, winding streets that hopefully the police wouldn't know as well. But as they burst onto the next street, Robin skidded to a halt. It was a dead end. A solid brick wall stood at the end of the street, looming dark and insurmountable. No alleys, no shortcuts, no escape. They were trapped. He spun around, his chest heaving, looking back the way they came. The sounds were closer now, pounding feet, heavy familiar footsteps mixed with the quicker ones of the police. Shouting. Sound of LJ's voice, closer now, though still hard to make out over the breathing. He could see them now, figures turning onto the street. LJ, his face a blur in the fading light, still running towards them, still gesturing. The police officers right behind him. Robin shielded Mari slightly, his mind racing. There had to be a way out. A drain pipe? A loose brick? Something. But there was nothing, just the wall and the closing trap. He looked at LJ, his heart aching with confusion and betrayal. Why? Why was he doing this? sweated against the dim streetlights. LJ was breathing heavily, his massive chest rising and falling. The police officers were already reaching for their handcuffs. Robin stood frozen, cornered. The Benjamin felt like a lead weight in his pocket now. The dreams of gold and helping people felt impossibly far away. He looked at LJ, searching his face for an answer, for a sign that this wasn't what it looked like. But LJ just stood there, his chest heaving, looking lost? Afraid? Robin couldn't tell.
Hold on.
All right, kid.
An officer said, stepping forward.
It's over. Hands where I can see them.
Robin didn't move. He looked from the officer to LJ and back again. Caught at a dead end, betrayed. Or was it? The truth, like the exit, was nowhere in sight.
Yeah, hold on a second. I gotta run these are just my group search.
Chapter 7. The Auditorium of Justice. Sort of. The air in the middle school auditorium was heavy and still, carrying the faint scent of old gym socks and floor wax. Robin sat slumped in a hard plastic seat, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, his mind a whirlwind of the chase, the dead end, and the confusing image of LJ. Rows of other kids, rounded up from the chaotic party, shifted nervously around him. Some sniffled quietly, others whispered in hushed tones. The police officers who had rounded them up stood impassively near the doors. Up on the stage, behind a long table that looked suspiciously like the one from the cafeteria, minus the spilled milk stains, sat Principal Higgins, a woman whose smile rarely reached her eyes, and beside her, looking equally stern, a grim-faced police officer and a representative from the school board. This wasn't just detention sign-up. This felt like the Supreme Court of middle school misbehavior.
All right, settle down,
Principal Higgins said, her voice amplified by the microphone, making it sound both tinny and imposing.
We are here today to address the unauthorized gathering that took place this afternoon.
Unauthorized gathering? Robin almost snorted. It was a party, lady, a spontaneous act of joy. That involved ditching school and might have technically been trespassing. Okay, maybe unauthorized gathering was accurate.
As you know,
the principal continued,
ditching school is a serious offense. Furthermore, organizing and participating in an event that disrupts the community and involves multiple students is unacceptable.
She adjusted her glasses, scanning the nervous faces in the audience.
We will be calling you forward one by one. Please come to the stage when your name is called.
A collective groan rippled through the auditorium. One by one? This was going to take forever. Robin felt a knot tighten in his stomach. What were they going to do? Call Mom? Ground him until college? Make him listen to Uncle Earl's conspiracy theories for 24 hours straight? The first name was called. A small girl with pigtails nervously shuffled up to the stage. The conversation was hushed, quick. She was sent back to her seat with a pink slip. A warning, probably. Then came a boy Robin knew from his English class. He was up there longer, his shoulders slumped as he walked back. Robin heard someone near him whisper, 3 days detention. The process was agonizingly slow, drawn out by the sheer number of kids caught. Each name called felt like a dramatic reveal in a tense movie. Some kids looked defiant, others tearful. A few seemed almost relieved it was finally happening. Robin watched them, feeling a strange mix of guilt and justification. Yeah, they'd ditched school, but they'd had fun. They'd escaped the monotony for a few hours. They'd felt free. Was that really so bad? Names kept coming. Detention slips were handed out like unwanted party favors. Suspensions were announced in hushed, serious tones that made everyone lean in to listen. Then came the first expulsion. A kid named Marcus, known for constantly getting into trouble, walked back down the aisle with a stunned, pale face. A ripple of nervous energy went through the room. Expulsion. That was serious. Where was LJ? Robin scanned the faces in the audience. He hadn't seen him since the dead end. Had he somehow gotten away after all? Then he saw him, LJ, being escorted down the aisle by another officer, not sternly, but more like he was being politely nudged. LJ's face was unreadable, his large frame seeming to shrink slightly in the overwhelming stillness of the auditorium. He wasn't sitting with the other kids. He was being brought directly to the stage. Robin's heart leapt. LJ was caught. But was he going to tell? He'd promised to help. He'd taken the money cut. He wouldn't rat, would he? Even after running after him like that? LJ stood before the table, a giant among the seated officials. Principal Higgins spoke to him quietly. LJ responded in a low voice that didn't carry. The police officer standing next to the principal seemed to be shaking his head slightly. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone knew LJ was involved. He was the biggest kid there, hard to miss. What was his fate? Finally, Principal Higgins cleared her throat and spoke into the microphone.
LJ is being given 3 days of after-school detention.
3 days? That was it? After all that? Robin felt a wave of relief, quickly followed by confusion. 3 days was nothing compared to some of the suspensions already handed out. LJ had held it down. He hadn't told. He'd taken his small hit, but he'd kept Robin's secret. The chase. Maybe it wasn't what it looked like. Maybe he was trying to help. The confusion about LJ remained, but the certainty of his loyalty, at least in this moment, felt like a lifeline. LJ walked off the stage and was directed to a seat closer to the front. He didn't look at Robin. Names continued. The air remained thick with anticipation. Where was Mary? Robin scanned the audience again. She wasn't there. She'd gotten away. A small victory in a sea of defeat. Then, Principal Higgins looked down at her list, took a deep breath, and the knot in Robin's stomach twisted into a Gordian knot of dread.
Robin Hood.
Robin stood up, his legs feeling like cooked spaghetti. He walked the long, echoing path to the stage, acutely aware of every single eye on him. He reached the table, his reflection a small, scared figure in the polished wood. Principal Higgins looked at him, her expression serious.
Robin, you were observed participating in, and based on evidence, primarily organizing, this unauthorized gathering.
Okay, fine. Guilty as charged on the party.
Furthermore,
the police officer spoke up, his voice flat and official.
You were seen fleeing from law enforcement officers when they arrived on the scene. Attempting to evade arrest is a serious matter.
Running from police. Check. That charge felt bigger.
And finally,
Principal Higgins said, looking at a piece of paper with a frown.
There is the matter of the money found in your possession.
Robin's blood ran cold. The money. JP's money. He felt the weight of it in his jacket pocket. A silent accuser.
Mr. J.P. Worthington reported a significant amount of cash missing from his pocket today.
The police officer stated, his eyes fixed on Robin.
Witnesses saw you in close proximity to where the money was later discovered missing.
Here it came. The big one.
Now, Robin,
Principal Higgins said, her voice losing a touch of its official tone, becoming more disappointed.
When questioned about this, you claimed you simply found the money. Is that correct?
Robin swallowed hard.
Yes, Principal Higgins. It fell out near my foot. I didn't take it from his pocket or anything. I just saw it there.
The police officer leaned forward slightly.
But you didn't turn it in, did you? To your teacher? To the school office? To Mr. Worthington?
Robin mumbled, no.
Why not?
The officer pressed. Robin hesitated. How could he explain? That he saw it as opportunity? That it represented a way to fix things? That it felt like a little piece of justice against a kid who had just mocked him for being poor? He couldn't say any of that.
I was going to.
He lied weakly, knowing it sounded hollow.
Later.
Principal Higgins sighed, a heavy, theatrical sound.
Robin, finding money, even if by chance, comes with responsibility. The responsible thing to do, the right thing to do, is to immediately report it and turn it in, not to conceal it and then flee from authorities.
The officer reached over and, with a practiced motion, removed the folded wad of cash from Robin's pocket. It felt like a piece of his plan, a piece of his dream being confiscated.
Because you didn't immediately turn it in,
the officer said, his voice stern.
It raises suspicion. Suspicion of intent.
Intent. They were saying he stole it. Even if he'd just found it, his failure to report it immediately made him guilty in their eyes. The principle of finders keepers clearly didn't apply in the auditorium of justice.
Considering the combined nature of these offenses,
Principal Higgins announced, looking at the papers before her.
Ditching school, organizing an unauthorized gathering, attempting to evade authorities, and the suspicious circumstances surrounding the recovered money.
Robin braced himself. Suspension? Expulsion? Was he going to end up like Marcus?
Robin.
Principal Higgins finished, her voice firm.
You are sentenced to 1 week of lunch detention and 1 week of after-school detention.
1 week? That was it? After all that drama, all that running, all those charges, 1 week of detention? It felt both like a heavy punishment and, strangely, a narrow escape. He was handed a long, detailed detention slip that felt heavier than the money had. It listed the offenses, the dates, the times.
This is a serious matter, Robin,
Principal Higgins said, her stern look returning.
We expect better. Use this time to reflect on your choices and the importance of honesty and responsibility.
Responsibility. Honesty. Robin nodded, taking the slip. He felt a mix of emotions, relief, shame, frustration, and a lingering sense of injustice. They didn't understand. They saw a kid who ditched, ran, and took money. They didn't see the broken oven, the worn-out shoes, the dreams of making things better. He walked back down the aisle, clutching the detention slip, feeling the eyes on him. He passed LJ, who still didn't look at him. He reached his seat, collapsing into it. 1 week of detention. It wasn't quite Sing Sing, but it felt like a prison sentence for a crime where his intentions, the true motives of this Robin Hood of the projects, were completely misunderstood. They got the money back. JP would get his cash. Mrs. Rodriguez's oven was still broken. Tiny Tim's sister's shoes were still wearing out. But Robin had learned something. Justice, in the real world, wasn't always about right and wrong. Sometimes it was just about who got caught and who managed to explain themselves, or couldn't. The Auditorium of Justice continued its grim work, calling the next name. Robin sat there, detention slip in hand, already planning his next move. 1 week of detention was just a minor setback. The trenches were still there, and the dreams of making things better, those hadn't gotten detention. Chapter 8, The Long Road to Righteousness and Really Good Grades. Detention. It sounded like a medieval torture chamber, and to Robin, it felt pretty close. The room, usually a bustling art class, was now a silent tomb of forced reflection. The only sounds were the relentless ticking of the wall clock, the occasional cough from a fellow inmate, or student, as Ms. Applebottom insisted they still were, and the scratch, scratch, scratch of her pen as she graded papers. Robin sat at a desk that smelled faintly of dried paint and old glue, staring at the blank sheet of paper Ms. Applebottom had given him. Reflect on your poor choices and how you can improve, her note had read. Improve. The word echoed in his head. Improve? How? By not finding money? By not having a party? By not running from cops who clearly didn't understand the intricacies of impromptu community cohesion events? But beneath the bitterness, a different thought began to take root. He was sitting here for a week of lunch detention, eating stale sandwiches in silence, and a week of after-school detention, missing out on whatever chaotic adventures Kai and Tiny Tim were cooking up. This wasn't the future he envisioned. This wasn't the path to solid gold toilets and community centers. This was a detour through Dullsville. He imagined his future self, Robin Hood, millionaire philanthropist, sitting in a gilded boardroom.
Well, gentlemen, the reason I'm able to fund this new Loxley PJs library is because I spent a week contemplating my poor choices in Mrs. Applebottom's art class.
He suppressed a chuckle. No, that wasn't it. This was a wake-up call. A cosmic elbow to the ribs. Preacher Man Tuck's words echoed in his mind.
Kids with dreams bigger than these buildings. Kids who want to do good, who want to help, who want to make things better.
He couldn't do that from detention. He couldn't do that if he kept getting in trouble. He couldn't do that if he kept letting opportunities turn into, well, jail time, even if it was just lunch jail. His eyes drifted to the textbook Ms. Applebottom had given him to catch up on ancient history. It was open to a page about some dusty king. Robin sighed, but this time it was a sigh of resignation, not defiance. He picked up his pencil. This week of detention, this 2 weeks of detention, was going to be different. It was going to be the turning point. He'd put his head down, he'd learn, he'd be better. 2 weeks felt like 2 years. Each ticking second of detention was a slow, agonizing crawl. But Robin forced himself to focus. He asked Ms. Applebottom for help. He actually listened when she explained things. He started taking notes. The first few days were torture. His brain felt like it was trying to run a marathon in quicksand. But then, slowly, something shifted. The facts began to connect. The numbers started to make sense. The words on the page weren't just a jumble anymore. He started going to the school library after school, not just for detention, but because he actually wanted to. He asked the librarian for help finding books on, well, everything. He even convinced LJ, who occasionally wandered into the library to sketch statues, to help him with math problems. LJ, it turned out, was a quiet genius with numbers.
It's just patterns. Like figuring out the best escape route, but with numbers.
Robin started attending the free after-school study sessions, even though they were filled with kids who looked like they'd been born with textbooks glued to their hands. He asked for a tutor. He even managed to get extra help from his mom, who, when she wasn't working, patiently went over his homework with him, her brow furrowed in concentration. The 2 weeks of detention ended, but Robin's new path didn't. 2 years flew by, 2 years that felt both impossibly long and incredibly fast. The initial spark of determination forged in the crucible of detention had grown into a steady flame. Robin wasn't just getting by anymore, he was excelling. He still had his dreams of wealth and philanthropy, but now they were grounded in something solid, hard work, knowledge, and the unwavering belief that he could actually do something. He graduated middle school. The graduation dinner party was held in their small apartment, made to feel festive with balloons, a new tablecloth, bought by his mom, not liberated from any store, and the ever-present aroma of his mom's celebratory stew. Uncle Earl was there, loudly complaining about the humidity, but also, surprisingly, beaming with pride. Ray and Ray, now 16, still cool and aloof, actually gave Robin a rare, genuine nod of approval. Kai and Tiny Tim were there, elbowing each other and making jokes about Robin having a brain transplant. LJ sat quietly in a corner, looking proud and occasionally sketching in his notebook.
To my favorite nephew,
Uncle Earl declared, raising a glass of sparkling cider,
who finally decided that straight A's were better than straight out of here.
Exactly.
Mom gently put a hand on Uncle Earl's arm.
Earl, please.
No, it's true, Uncle Earl insisted. He cleaned up his act. Stopped with the shenanigans. Which reminds me, Robin, I saw a squirrel on my fire escape this morning looking very shifty. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Those bushy-tailed bandits are always plotting something, I tell you.
Robin just laughed, a genuine, light-hearted sound. He took a sip of his cider. Then, the front door opened again, and Preacher Man Tuck squeezed in, his usual booming presence filling the small apartment. He was wearing his finest suit, and his smile stretched from ear to ear.
Brother Robin Hood!
Preacher Man Tuck boomed, striding towards him, his arms outstretched for a congratulatory hug that nearly swallowed Robin whole.
Look at you, all grown up, a middle school graduate. Next thing you know, you'll be running the whole city.
Robin laughed, squirming out of the hug.
Hey, Preacher Man Tuck.
I tell you what, son.
Preacher Man Tuck said, holding Robin at arm's length and looking him over.
This reminds me of the story of the young chicken who wanted to fly to the moon.
Uncle Earl snorted.
Here we go.
Now this chicken.
Preacher Man Tuck continued, ignoring Uncle Earl.
He practiced. He flapped. He jumped off the barn roof. Didn't quite make it to the moon, mind you. Landed headfirst in a pile of, well, let's just say organic fertilizer. But you know what he learned.
Preacher Man Tuck leaned in, his eyes twinkling.
He learned this sometimes, even when you aim for the moon and land in the fertilizer, you still learn a lot about your wings and about where not to land next time.
He paused, a knowing look passing over his face.
And sometimes you learn that even a little misstep, a little unauthorized gathering in the wrong place, can be the beginning of a journey to somewhere even higher than the moon. Somewhere closer to where you're meant to be.
He clapped Robin on the shoulder.
I heard about what happened, son, but I also heard about what happened after. Heard you've been hitting those books. Heard you've been asking questions. Heard you've been working hard. That's the real flight, Robin. That's the real aiming for the stars.
Robin felt a warmth spread through him. Preacher Man Tuck knew. He knew everything, and he wasn't judging. He was encouraging. He was saying it was okay to stumble, as long as you learned to fly again. Preacher Man Tuck clapped his hands together.
Now, who's got some of that famous Hood family stew? A growing preacher needs his sustenance.
As the laughter and chatter resumed, Robin looked around the small, crowded apartment. His mom, beaming. Uncle Earl, already complaining about the gravy. Ray and Ray, exchanging sarcastic glances. LJ, quietly supportive. And Mary, perhaps somewhere out there, living her own quiet, dignified life. He had a long way to go. The Loxley PJs were still the Loxley PJs. But he was different. He was smarter. He was stronger. He had a plan. And he had a feeling that the real adventures, the real changes he wanted to make, were just beginning. His middle school graduation was just the prologue. The saga of Robin Hood, in all its messy, hilarious, and determined glory, was officially underway. Fade out the sounds of the party, the laughter, and a triumphant swell of background music. Cast: Robin Hood, voiced by Tay Walker. Mari, voiced by Sierra Cruz. LJ, Little John, voiced by Malik, Big M Johnson. Uncle Dre, voiced by J.D. Flames. Dee Dee, voiced by Nia Bell. Dre Jr., voiced by Tyson Brooks. Robin's mom, voiced by Aisha Renee. Preacher Man Tuck, voiced by Elder Mookie Watts. J.P., voiced by Cameron Lee. Principal the Judge, voiced by Vivica Miles. Officer Grimes, voiced by R.J. Cooper. Five years later, the Loxley Project still stood, a stubborn monument to urban resilience. But here and there, new touches hinted at change. A fresh coat of paint on a communal wall. A small, thriving community garden where the broken swings once were. Inside apartment 3B, the leaking faucet had been fixed, replaced by a gleaming, functional new one. The kitchen, while still modest, felt brighter, more lived in, less worn down. On a small, slightly scuffed desk in the corner of the living room, illuminated by the glow of a laptop screen, sat a teenager. This was Robin Hood, 15 years old now. His frame was leaner, taller, his movements more deliberate. His hair was longer, pulled back in a casual knot. He still wore a faded hoodie, but beneath it, you could see the faint outline of well-developed shoulders. His brow was furrowed in concentration as his fingers danced across the keyboard, lines of code scrolling rapidly on the screen. Empty energy drink cans stood guard like miniature aluminum sentinels. He leaned back, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. "Bingo," he murmured to himself, stretching his arms above his head. The scent of digital success mingled with the smell of popcorn popping on the stove. Robin blinked, pulling his attention away from the screen. He frowned slightly. Who would be here at this hour? His mom was working a late shift. Uncle Earl usually announced his presence with a fanfare of complaints from the hallway. The knocking came again, firm and unyielding. Robin pushed away from his desk, the chair scraping softly on the laminate floor. He walked to the door, peering through the peephole. A familiar, towering silhouette filled the small lens. He unlocked the 3 separate locks, a habit born of years in the projects, and pulled the door open just a crack, then wider. Standing there, filling the doorway, was LJ. He was massive now, even at 15, a true, gentle giant. He practically eclipsed the hallway light. His shoulders were broad enough to comfortably carry a small car, his arms like tree trunks. He wore a faded t-shirt that strained against his biceps and cargo shorts that looked like they were designed for someone half his size. His face, though still quiet and thoughtful, had gained a new maturity. A thin, light drizzle of rain clung to his hair and shoulders. LJ stood there, looking down at Robin with his usual steady gaze. A faint, knowing smirk touched the corner of his lips. He didn't say anything immediately, just stood there, a silent, looming question mark in the doorway. Robin just looked at him, a smile slowly spreading across his own face. He knew that look. He knew that silence. It usually meant something big was brewing, or that LJ had just discovered a new type of fungus in the community garden. With LJ, it could go either way.
"All right, big man,"
Robin said, leaning against the doorframe, a hint of his old mischievous charm sparkling in his eyes.
"You going to come in, or are you just going to stand there looking like a very large, slightly damp garden gnome?"
LJ's smirk widened slightly. He took a deep breath, filling his substantial lungs. The scent of rain and fresh air wafted into the apartment. He looked past Robin, towards the glow of the laptop screen, then back at Robin.
"Hey, Robin,"
LJ said, his voice a low, resonant rumble that felt like it shook the floorboards. He paused, letting the question hang in the air, perfectly timed, as if he'd been rehearsing it for 5 years. Then, with that knowing smirk still in place, LJ finished.
"You're still trying to get rich?"
Robin Hood. Produced by Temno TV, Temno LLC. Written and created by Temno TV, Temno LLC. Narrator Omari Steele. Voice direction Eli Evans. Dialogue Coach Gemma Nye. Sound design and mixing Cara Fields. Audio editing Darren Miles. Music composer and soundtrack Temno Music, Temno LLC. Original score produced by Temno Music, Temno LLC. Cover, art, and design Chad G. Petey. Marketing and distribution Temno TV, Temno LLC marketing team. Main characters and voices: Robin Hood, voiced by Omari Steele. Mari, voiced by Sierra Cruz. LJ, Little John, voiced by Malik, Big M. Johnson. Uncle Dre, voiced by J.D. Flamez. Dee, Cousin, voiced by Nia Bell. Dre Jr., Cousin, voiced by Tyson Brooks. Robin's mom, voiced by Aisha Renee. Preacher Mantuck, voiced by Elder Mookie Watts. JP, voiced by Cameron Lee. Principal the Judge, voiced by Vivica Miles. Officer Grimes, voiced by R.J. Cooper. Special thanks to the voices and creators who brought this story to life. to the dreamers in the PJs, the believers in the back row of the bus, and to you, our listener, for riding with Robin. Published by Temno, LLC. Robin Hood is a work of fiction. All characters and events are imaginary. Copyright 2025. Temno, LLC. All rights reserved.